we had plans of like how frequently to invest, how much do I need to put in, what's my life goal. But the problem is, and maybe it's not a problem, but my life is very complicated, hard to explain, and takes up a lot of time.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Among the nation's foremost thought leaders on the future of digital healthcare, America's favorite doctor, Laura Purdy, MD, MBA, is board-certified family medicine physician and the medical director of the AFD brand. She's licensed in all 50 states, including DC, serves patients nationwide while partnering with industry innovators to develop virtual health offerings to support a higher standard of care. Beginning her career as an Army physician, Dr. Purdy spent 14 years helping soldiers and their families through the power of telehealth. Now she's a sought-after digital medicine expert and advisor for hundreds of leading telehealth providers. Today, we're going to talk about her journey in medicine, real estate, and investing, on all of the unsolicited advice she's received through the years and how some of it has worked, some of it hasn't worked, and how she takes advice now. Please welcome America's favorite doctor, Laura Purdy. All right, welcome to the show. I've been excited for this conversation today. Laura, we chatted on your live IG post not too long ago. That was an awesome conversation. Now I'm excited because I get to ask the questions. So welcome to the show, Laura. First of all, Dr. Laura Purdy, America's favorite doctor, right?
That's what they say.
How did all that come about? Where did that name come from?
Oh, man. Well, I have had patients all across the country. I've been licensed in all 50 states, and I've had patients all across the country. I've also worked with a lot of clinicians who then treat patients. And so my influence as a physician spreads far and wide. I would argue farther than probably any other physician in America. But the heart and the feedback and the way that we treat patients is really recognized and acknowledged by them. And so it has actually come from comments that we've received from patients, from partners, from affiliates, and they say, "We love working with you. You're the best doctor I've ever had, even though it's often remote." That's where that came from.
Very, very cool. America's favorite doctor. And that's, of course, where everybody can find you on Instagram before we even get started, right? At America's favorite doctor, just the way that it sounds, spelled the same way, easy to find. And you've got amazing content. It's awesome to watch you and your story. And I was just chatting with you before we got started here about the grind that you find yourself in, and you're constantly traveling. So we're recording this in the afternoon, and the first thing you say is good morning. And I'm like, oh, where are you at?
Home.
Yeah, home.
Yeah.
So catching the red eye overnight there. Very interesting. But let's get right into this. So that was just a little bit of your story about kind of like the medicine piece, being licensed in over 50 states. Holy cow. But that's the new virtual approach. Tell us a little bit about where you started in medicine and now where are you at?
Of course, I started in the military. I did my medical school and my residency and my first 7 years of practice working for the United States Army, the Department of Defense, and started doing telemedicine, virtual care in a moonlighting capacity just to make more money. We're going to talk about money today. And you don't get paid very well when you work for the federal government in any capacity, I don't think. But I think I always have had an entrepreneurial heart and mindset. That my dad was an entrepreneur and worked in business, and I watched him do all of that. And so I think I've had the bug for forever. And I used to say I'm a businesswoman disguised as a doctor. And now I say I'm not disguising myself anymore. I'm really leaning into the business side of things. And so these days I own my own company. I've created the nation's first concierge nationwide healthcare system called AFD.health, which the website's not up yet. Otherwise we direct you to it. But now what we're looking at is innovative ways to deliver care in ways that we've never seen it done before.
Very exciting. And leading into the business piece of that is very exciting as well, too. What does your team look like now?
Well, there's a really interesting way that you have to do things when you're in healthcare. You have to have two separate corporate entities that are linked through a management service agreement. And if that doesn't make any sense, it's pretty much like subcontracting a medical group to help deliver the care. So I'm the CEO of the corporate entity now, and we're working on getting a medical director in place to be in charge of the medical group. And then underneath that, it looks just like what you would think. So in the medical group, which is a clinic, we have it has to be head up by a physician. Then we have MAs, RNs, LPNs, and then other providers will be in there as well. Just like you would think in a clinic. On the headquarters or the corporate element, again, just like what you would think, you have administration, marketing, technology, operations, legal goes in there, HR goes in there, and then there's, down lines of people who kind of do the work and report up the chain. So just like any other corporation.
Very interesting. And now what I definitely want to jump into is the investing piece. We talked kind of a little bit about business ownership, mindset, all of these kind of things, but I'm excited to talk about real estate with you and learn your path on where did that start. And I know you've got some Airbnbs now I want to talk about. So where's your tell us about your first experience with real estate.
Specifically with real estate or investing as a whole?
Real estate. Let's talk real estate first.
So in the year, let me just start by saying I am not a finance professional. I have, up until this point, never really gotten what I would consider to be sound financial advice, other than what I learned from my dad growing up, which was the basics of budgeting and, investing and things like that. We'll start there. So in the 2020 and 2021 tax years, I had to pay a ton of taxes because my business, so I'm an entrepreneur, and I registered my business as a sole proprietor entity, right? So all an S corporation. So everything that was business income actually passed through into my taxes. And then obviously like payroll, W-2 salaries, all of that had to be written off on my taxes. And it was all under me. Thankfully, I'm changing that for next year. We're going to be a C corporation and that's done. But I had to pay a ton of income taxes for those couple of tax years. So going into 2022, which was last year, I said, okay, I don't ever want to pay this much again. What can I do to not have to pay this much in taxes again? And obviously there's lots of different strategies and everyone has an opinion, but I'll be honest with you, I don't have time to hear everyone's opinions. I still don't have time to hear everyone's opinions. And I have a feeling that many people have right opinions, but people love to share them in an unsolicited fashion. What I said was, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend as much money on real estate this upcoming year as I did on taxes last year. And that's how it started. So my first one, and I said, I only want to own real estate in places where I have to go, want to go, or will go. Because in my mind, I don't intend to become a real estate professional necessarily, but I do think it's smart to have a few hanging around. So I started with Panama City Beach, which was, it was fine. I think there were a few things that I wasn't necessarily told about when I got it, which was number one, there was big drama llama stuff going on with the board of directors that like I wanted absolutely nothing to do with. I got it at the shores of Panama, which is in Panama City Beach. And there was a ton of drama, which took up the whole first year. And that was very annoying. It made good income. It has a mortgage on it. It pays its own bills, which I think is great. I have a management company that handles all of that for me. And I think the first one was really good. I ended up buying 3 more last year. So there were 4 real estate acquisitions, 2 were cash, 2 have mortgage. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
So you started, first of all, you started off, it sounds like with a mission, like a plan. If thens, like if it fits inside, then it's what you want to acquire. So the first one was spending as much as what you paid in taxes in the previous year to acquire new properties. And then you want to find them in places that, you would want to go or will go, those kinds of things. So I like that idea. And the other thing I just wanted to echo too is like everybody has an opinion and wants to share it unsolicited,
They do.
And very interesting. And you also say you don't have the time to listen to all that, good or bad. You don't have the time to listen to all that. So those are challenging things. But you did take off with a direction, and you basically have your investment criteria. Now I'm thinking there was probably a little more criteria in there related to the returns.
I mean, I was looking for something that would at the very least pay its own bills, because I know that properties appreciate. I know if I'm going to go spend time there, especially in the off-season weeks, then that's vacation money that I don't have to pay. And occasionally I can use it as gifts for people too. Like I've used them for weddings, honeymoons, even like bereavement leaves, like when people who've had deaths in the family, I will just say go to the beach for a few days. And I feel like return for me isn't necessarily just the money that it brings in, because I can look at the opportunity cost and things like that as well.
Very interesting. That's a very cool perspective of seeing the value in other ways other than just monetary on paper.
Yeah.
And then I guess one thing that popped up in my mind as we were talking about that too is, I don't know if you've heard it, don't let the tax tail wag the dog. So just being the idea of, okay, we build through this career, and so some of us in entrepreneurship, this point where we finally make money. And then comes the realization as we finally pay taxes, right? And then there's just that pain of that burden. But then we start looking at ways, and some of us, even before we get to that way, afraid of making money because of the tax scenario. And we start making these decisions that help us beneficially for taxes, but kind of hurt our cash flow as well, too. So sometimes it just watch out for making those kinds of decisions to not pay taxes and actually hurt your cash flow and could hurt your other business as well, too. So just staying a watch out for that. And Laura, I'm not a licensed financial advisor or a CPA or a tax attorney or any of that stuff too, but we get to share these stories based off of our own experiences. So we're sitting here with 4 real estate properties now, and the main, what I heard is the main goal was just offsetting this tax burden, right? But you still have this active versus passive scenario. Like we can use the passive losses to write off our passive income, but we can't cross that line unless we jump a couple of hurdles into the active income to offset that. So if you, in your one business, you were making, enough money to pay 6 figures in taxes, then you've got to find that way to leverage real estate to offset that by hitting certain criterias. You're probably not, just hearing your story and knowing you're probably not qualified as a real estate professional. Is that correct?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where the more of that time comes in, and in order to do that. And just, I wanted to mention that because that's how we would cross that line through the tax purpose or through that tax barrier of active versus passive. You did talk about your first investment piece when we jumped into that question. Tell us a little bit more about that first investment that you made prior to real estate. Sounds like
the first. Oh, you mean like my first, like not involving real estate?
Yes.
Oh, well, when I was 18 years old, I had been a professional pianist all throughout high school, and I left that career to become a doctor. But my dad at the time said, "You're going to invest all $7,000." I had $7,000 saved up in my checking account, and he said, "You're going to invest all of it." And I said, "I don't want to do that." And he said, "Yes, you will. You're going to do it, and you're going to write a check." And he said, "If you ever lose money on it, then I'll pay back what you lost." He died 10 years later, but I never lost money on it. So that's a moot point. I still actually, so those were Edward Jones investments, and I have contributed to them off and on since then. Now they're in Merrill Lynch, and I have 4 college savings plans, one's for each of the kids. I have IRAs, stocks. I have a pretty diversified portfolio. So I was just adding real estate to it, really.
And you mentioned that you never really received any sound advice. What did you mean by that when it comes to investing?
Well, I should say recently, right? Because for probably a decade and a half, I did have a financial advisor that I spoke with quarterly to set up my Edward Jones funds, is where I was at the time. So we had plans of like how frequently to invest, how much do I need to put in, what's my life goal. But the problem is, and maybe it's not a problem, but my life is very complicated, hard to explain, and takes up a lot of time. And people get old, people retire, new people come in, and nobody ever understands what in the world it is I do. And so in the last, I would say it's probably been 5 years since I sat down with someone really to have a real big discussion about everything. And I just don't have the time for that right now.
So it's been 5 years since you've had that discussion. What if there are some of the listeners are kind of in that same situation where they don't have time? I mean, could you share any experience that you do have looking for that right direction?
Sure. So I would say I started with Edward Jones, right? And the reason why I did that is because that was the person that my dad had used forever. So I trusted the person that my dad trusted. And I think when I was younger, when I was in school, when I was in training, when I was still in the military, not making a lot of money, but needing to know what to do, I think that was great. When you're a small business owner, when you're a physician, when you're having more income or diverse streams of revenue, and I think it becomes a larger problem set, and you really need someone who understands you. So right now, what I have, it was so annoying. I had USAA Bank people. If anybody's ever had USAA Bank, I had them for almost 20 years because I was in the military, and they kept shutting down my account to investigate me because they didn't understand my income and just where and how it comes from, with like 1099s and checks and things like that. So I moved everything over to a Bank of America Merrill Lynch wealth management account. I do not mean to imply that I am a wealthy person. Okay. You don't have to be rich to use it, but I was able to consolidate all of my assets, all the mutual funds, all the IRAs, all the stocks, all the children's 529 college savings plans, and also my checking and savings account into one thing. So when I log in, I see it, and there are financial advisors, there are planners, there are people that can help you with that, especially if you haven't, I mean, I guess talking out loud, it does sound like I've had quite a bit of financial advice, but it's just been a few years since I updated the plan. But if you don't know where to start, college saving plans for your kids is a good idea. I think investing a little bit each month and just kind of setting it on autopilot and considering that as a bill is great. And you can kind of see what that's going to look like long term. And I don't know, on the one hand, I don't love asking my peers for advice because they think that their advice is the best and they think that their advice applies to me. So I don't talk to my peers at all. I don't talk to my friends at all. I think that financial advice should come from an unbiased third-party observer who has nothing to gain or lose and has no opinions on your stuff. That's just my opinion.
Very interesting. Do you think that you're hurting yourself at all by not kind of enabling yourself to hear you say things out loud and to hear things out loud like you were just saying? By putting that wall kind of around you, are you limiting yourself at all, do you feel?
No, I don't think so.
I don't have any opinion, or I'm not pushing you in any direction. I'm just asking a question, you know?
No, so here's why. So I'm a doctor. I'll give you an analogy. I'm a doctor, and it, on the one hand, yes, there is a place for people to go online and like research their symptoms and like be empowered. And I'm a fan of that. But when it comes to lay people giving someone medical advice who needs it, it almost always does more harm than good. And as a doctor, when people come to me and they've gotten unsolicited or unhelpful, but well-intended medical advice from non-medical professionals, I don't feel like that's helpful. So for me, whenever I need to get expert advice on someone, I want to talk to a professional expert who does it for a living. I don't want unsolicited, opinionated advice from people who aren't experts in the field, because I feel like, number one, I don't have any way to know whether it's credible, or number two, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to those who have dedicated their lives to, for example, the financial profession. So out of professional courtesy and also out of not falling onto landmines, I kind of choose to wait to talk to the people who are experts in it. I don't feel like I'm doing myself a disservice necessarily, because the last 2 years has been a period of transition. Like my income has changed, my work has changed. I got out of the military, I bought, renovated, and now I'm selling a house for double the price. So, for double the amount I put into it. And so I don't think that anything is an actual catastrophe, but I am kind of waiting for things to settle down and level out a bit, convert the business over into the C Corp, see what I'm left with personally, and then kind of come up with a plan for way forward with an expert, not friends with thoughts and opinions.
Friends with thoughts. Absolutely. One of the challenges there too is, you use the doctor as a reference, in your family practice, right?
Yes.
So when somebody comes to you, in the family scenario, you're not going to be the professional who talks about like the orthopedic surgery piece. I mean, you may have a general idea, correct? And stop me if I'm wrong. I'm not a physician, so I don't know. But you will refer them to another professional or another specialist, right? So the difficult part in financial and I guess real estate financial advising is what are those? Are there the same type of classifications? Are we able to like reach out for somebody? Because we have the tendencies, you said Edward Jones, like I'm going to go to Edward Jones and they're going to have all the answers for me. But that's kind of like in my mind, going to the family practice physician and asking about, something to do with orthopedics or something to do with nerve damage or something,
Yeah, I mean, I'm very clear with people. So I treat every engagement like I would a business situation, right? So as a family medicine doctor, I'm responsible for knowing my limits, knowing what's in my scope and what's out of my scope, and when to send someone away. So when I sit down with someone, I will say right up front, I'm going to tell you what I need. And then you're going to tell me if you're an expert at this or not. And if you're not, but you tell me that you are, I'm going to find out and I'll go somewhere else, right? Because that's a stipulation. And I'll say, if we do find a limit where your scope of expertise is outside of what I'm asking for, I actually do this with my attorneys too. Like I just had my corporate lawyer refer me to an intellectual property lawyer because we need some trademarks and he can't do that. So I expect that the professionals will be expert enough to tell me where their limit lies. And if they can't do it, then refer me to someone that can be a trusted source. I have no problem terminating contracts when people don't hold up that end of the deal.
I love that as a question, and just being able to, I guess, put that in our brain, plant that seed and say, hey, when we're going into this conversation, what I would love for you to do is just let me know kind of where you're at. Because where I was going at with that question, Laura, was imagine just going into Edwards Jones and saying, okay, I'm thinking about investing in real estate. Or even let me say, I'm thinking about rolling my Roth IRA into a self-directed account, and I would really love checkbook control over that so I can purchase real estate. What do you think about that? I don't think that person would be like, no, you can't do that. Or no, I can't help you do that. There's going to be that line where I think there is a difference between the physician and the financial advisors in that regard, to not saying that there's no integrity there, but I think there's a different level of salesmanship.
Yeah, agree.
So
but I think that's where we draw the boundaries, right? Like we, as the customer, we are paying for a service. And if they can't do the service that we're paying for, then I do think we have an obligation to, you could say, be empowered to advocate for ourselves and make sure that we're getting what we're getting, and make sure that the contract we sign with them has stipulations to get out of the contract if they've been misleading.
Yep, absolutely. In your direction with, I guess, the financial advice piece, the business piece, these are two things that I see and hear a lot about being, I guess, lacking in the career education, the education career of physicians. What is your take on that? Do you feel that or do you feel you wish you would have had more of this experience up front as a physician? Because now look what Laura's doing. Laura's doing exactly what you weren't trained to do in school, right?
I wasn't trained to do most of what I'm doing right now. Well, and I think it's really unfortunate because a lot of physicians will own businesses. I mean, every private practice physician, like surgeon, dermatologist, family medicine, pediatrics, if it's not attached to a hospital, the odds, see my bracelet my kid made me. Yeah. If it's not attached to a hospital, then they're owning and running that business. And there's no education out there. I went back and got an MBA, and I've done a lot of work to try and help myself understand how to do this. But even still, I have to have consultants and advisors and ask very basic questions like, how do I interact with the finance department? Mm-hmm. As a CEO, I think doctors are really done a disservice by the system because they're taught how to do the medicine, but not how to run a business that is profitable and can survive without just absolutely running themselves into the ground.
And I've had a lot of conversations here on the show with physicians who actually go back and get their MBA. And these are entrepreneurs. These are those who have that bug, have that itch, and they find value in this. I love asking the question, have you found value in that MBA that you've earned?
Absolutely. Honestly, the reason why I got it was because I found myself thrust into business conversations that, number one, I didn't understand. It's a whole different language. Medicine and business are completely different languages. And number two, I wasn't taken seriously. If I had $1, here's some financial advice for you. The best way to get rich is to collect $1 every time someone says doctors are bad at business. I would be so rich, I would have an investment property in every state. But the reason why they say that, even though hearing that from someone in business, it can be a little bit of a sting, right? Because they're kind of dissing you. But that comes from frustration from them trying to do business with physicians unsuccessfully because we aren't set up for success. So I did it, number one, to be taken seriously, because when people hear she has an MBA, they say, okay, this is a doctor who does business. And then second of all, I can understand, receive, and then speak the same language to be able to communicate effectively with those outside of the healthcare profession.
You think that you could be where you're at without that MBA?
No, not at all.
Yeah. What specifically stands out to you as a shortcut in the trial by fire kind of approach? Which pieces stand out to you? And you said something about, learning how to speak and engage, but what was the biggest thing that stands out to you about the MBA?
So I think it's worth saying I did my MBA online during COVID, not from a particularly prestigious university. It was Southern New Hampshire University. And I did not get a concentration area. So I didn't do healthcare administration. I didn't do any of that. And the reason why is because I felt like that I have enough experience in the specialty realm that I didn't really need extra education on that. But what an MBA actually is it teaches you how to be a CEO. So you get high level, low depth, but wide breadth education on marketing, macro and microeconomics, business law. I mean, I think the business law was like the biggest benefit for me because you learn about contracts, illegal hiring and firing, how to manage people, laws, right? The laws are really important. Technology, it's been a minute, marketing, social justice, economics, like you get a high level overview operations on everything without going too deep. And so I think if you're going to run a business and own a business, you need to know a little about all of it because you're in charge of managing the marketers and the tech people and the operations people and the finance people and the HR people and the lawyers. So it's important for the CEO to know what questions you need to ask and of who. You're not making your own projections. You're not writing your own ads. You're not doing your own contracts, but you're responsible for stewarding and overseeing that and getting a little bit of education in all of it. I just can't place value to that. I really can't.
How long did that take you?
2 years.
2 years.
For those of you who are skeptical, I'm just going to tell you, I was pregnant. I had a baby. I had a huge side hustle that I was working. I was active duty in the military and it was COVID. So and I also had 3 other kids. No excuses.
And I think we talked when we talked on your interview, I think we talked a little bit about sales, if I'm not mistaken. And that right there, young lady, you just boxed in all the objectives. The objections, just all the way around it.
Time is there. And let me tell you, I'm going to tell you a secret. School is not as hard as it used to be. Shh, don't tell anybody I said that. So when I was doing my papers, so Southern New Hampshire University was not real time and it was all paper based and it was 10-page papers. You guys, I dictated my papers. I didn't even proofread the first one just because I wanted to see, is school harder or easier than it used to be? Because medical school is really doggone hard. Residency is even doggone harder, and all those exams we have to take. I mean, you just never want to study again a day in your life. MBA school is not that hard because it's more about the quality of the work you produce, the ideas, the generation, and are you retaining the major topics? It is a fraction of the difficulty of medical school. I dictated my papers and got A's in everything except for the math related courses because I'm always not going to be good at math. And it wasn't that hard.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. And towards the end of my college career, I was taking online classes and I remember taking those online classes. I'm like, wow, this is way different. And that's the basic reality now. I mean, it's been a while since I've been to school as well, but Yeah, absolutely crazy. And what I was asking that question because if I could go back, Laura, to your days in college, whether it was pre-med or getting your doctoral, this time I would say, hey, Laura, I'm going to give you the option to add 2 more years to your schooling, prolong 2 more years of debt, and 2 more years of not making any money. But I want to give you something that will change your life. And you're going to be so happy that you did this 10 years from now, 15 years from now. You're going to call me back and be like, Brett, thank you so much. But I'm going to add 2 years to your education career. Would you have done it?
At the time, no. Because I had no idea I was going into business. I had stars in my eyes about healthcare. I want to be a doctor. I'm going to join the military. It's going to be glamorous and great. And it was great, but it was not glamorous. So I don't think that young Laura would have done it. I really don't. Because I graduated school in 2.5 years. I went to the military to go to medical school, and I had a plan, and then my plan changed. If I knew I was an entrepreneur, if I knew I wanted to go into business, and if I had a vision of what now would be, yes, I would have, but I just didn't see it at the time.
And there's probably, as a CEO, I would ask probably HR this question. I would say, is there a psych test that we can do that will tell me, Laura, you need to do this piece. You need to take these courses because 10 years from now, when we grow together and these resources grow you're going to be thankful for this. It seems like there would be some sort of personality test that we can say, check the box for entrepreneur.
You would think so. I just never. But then again, I've kind of gone kicking and screaming into everything. You know, I feel like a lot of my choices made themselves for me and were very contextual and situational in the way that I chose them. And I don't know. I'm not sure what I would have done.
Interesting.
If my dad told me to do it, I would have done it because he was the one who said, you need to go be a doctor. So if he said I should go into business, then I think I would have done it. But
the fact is you did it. It took a different journey. It took a different path to get there. And I always love presenting the hypotheticals because I myself would not go back and change anything. I'm so happy with where I'm at and who I am. Of course, we both continue to learn and grow and help others around us. And the coolest part about helping others, Laura, I'm sure you know, is that as we help others, as we teach, we learn. I absolutely love that. And when you said earlier, when I hear myself saying this out loud, it's like, yes, that's when we get to learn. It's so exciting. Where do you see yourself going in real estate? I mean, we talked briefly. So these 4 that you have, they're all short-term, right? And you have these wonderful benefits that are just beyond monetary. And you're just hoping really the scenario that they're paying for themselves monetarily, if that's a word. I have to dictate that, see if I get an A on my paper. If that works, if they pay for themselves, there's other things there. But where do you see yourself going with real estate? Tell us a little bit about what the next couple of years look like for you.
I don't plan on acquiring any more real estate properties anytime soon. The only reason is because it's a big time of transition in the business. And I really want to pour myself into the business. So I'm just going to hold for now. I don't really have any more plans beyond that. I do think that moving forward within the next 10 years, I think I will continue to grow that. But right now, for probably the next 2 to 3, I'm just going to focus on making sure that the business is set up to be successful.
That's great. That's a great path. And I would say I don't want to offer unsolicited advice in this scenario, but I think you're right on. I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see where you're going in the path that's led you there. The one thing that I do hear a lot is if you have the ability to focus on your business, you're going to get a massive return on that. Granted, you are a good business person. You're in the right field. You have the right solution. You know how to manage your time, these pieces, but you're looking at a multiple, right? In that scenario, and everything that you put in there could be exponentially returned. And this is the things that you have that special, you have the special knowledge, you have that special experience that nobody else does. It's Laura, right? It's Laura's on the top of this, and that's what's growing. So I think that's great. But don't forget about real estate. Don't
I
do
don't
it.
plan
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. So it's so good, but it's where you can focus your time. And if you think about it like this, if you've got one glass of Laura energy and you're pouring that energy into all these little things, one for real estate, one for, doctor, telemedicine, and, Instagram messaging, all this kind of stuff. You've got a bunch of little cups of Laura energy. And when you pour that Laura energy into one focused thing, and where that exponential factor lies, it's exciting. It's exciting to see where that cup ends up. So, that's exciting. If anybody else wants to see or learn more, you do so much. And I say, like, what's your team look like? Because you're putting out so much content, so much value. You were doing this tour here recently where you're going to all these different offices. You're helping out, office practices. It's so cool to see. But everybody that's listening should go to America's Favorite Doctor on Instagram and follow. You can direct message Laura if you have any questions. There's so many videos on there. It's such great content. The clarity, the pictures, the videos, everything is so cool. So I'm a fan 100%. The AFD brand is definitely on my top list here. So thank you for your time. Laura, I talk a lot, but I love asking very directed questions. How do you do that? Is that
Actions.
Oh, wow. So for the listeners, she just held her hands up in a heart. Oh, look, look at this. So you've got to see this. We will put this on, the social media stuff. Look at this girl. All kinds of fireworks and hearts going on here. Last question for you for this interview is if you could go back 10 years and you could set beside somebody who resembles Laura, and at that time period, 10 years ago, knowing what you know now, but put yourself back then sitting next to this person, what would you tell that person?
I would tell that person to stop hesitating so long on the major decisions that she knows she needs to make.
Interesting.
I'm very decisive, but then I'm also very deliberative. So I pre-decide something pretty quickly. And then I hold off on executing said decision until I make sure that everyone who needs to be involved is on board and no one gets hurt and everyone's feelings are taken into consideration. And sometimes I take a little bit too long on that step and give people a little bit too much authority in the decisions that I know I need to make. So, and that actually applies to everything real estate, including like the house that I told you about in Tennessee that I bought before COVID that has now doubled in value and I'm selling it because I don't live there anymore. Literally doubled in value. Like that's a ridiculous return on investment. And I almost didn't buy it because someone almost talked me out of it. Right. But I knew that's what I needed to do. And I almost listened to those unsolicited opinions. So I would tell 10 years ago me to trust my own decision-making, stop deliberating and act with decisiveness in more cases than not.
That is awesome. Great suggestion. And it's those naysayers that hold us back. And in so many situations for physicians, for everybody else, you have so many people around you telling you, no, you can't do that. That's not good. And so many times they have no background. They have no experience. They have no idea what it is they're talking about. And you know what the thing is? They're going to be right every single time until they're wrong. And in this particular time, Laura, they were wrong. Now Laura's happy. Now Laura's selling this property, and hopefully, are you able to do a 1031 exchange?
I have no idea what that is.
So think about that. When are you selling this property?
It's on the market now,
okay.
But I'm not going to lower my price because people don't want to pay what it's listed for. But when I renovated that thing, I poured myself into that house and bought the best of the best of the best. And I did not cut any corners. Yep. So I'm not dropping the price. Someone will see the value and pay for it.
And if you're in a need versus want scenario right now, you're in a want, you don't need, you can sit on that and find that because every property is worth what somebody's willing to pay for. And all you have to do is find that somebody. And if you're in a want scenario, you can wait for that somebody. You can find Laura 2.0 to acquire that property who has the same tastes and acquire that. But listen to me. This is unsolicited. You're going to get it because you need to hear this one.
I'm ready.
1031 exchange. That was an investment property? Was it recently?
No, it was my primary home.
Oh, primary. Okay. Years. So that one would have to consult with the tax attorneys on it to see if you could do a 1031 exchange on that, if at all, because I'm thinking of the capital gains. If you lived in it for so long in some states, you don't have capital gains. I'm just thinking about your capital gains, and there's some way that you can be proactive versus reactive in this scenario. It's going to help you out a lot, if that brings any value at all.
I'll look into it. It's definitely something that I need to look into, because my plan was, that was my primary residence. And so I need to buy a new primary residence. I'm just renting this place right now.
Yeah.
So, I should find a house to live in, but
yeah,
it's going to take some time, I think.
That 1031 is exchange for like-kind investment. So that may not particularly line up, but you always want to look at proactive solutions instead of reactive solutions, especially on those big triggering events for people who are selling practices, people who are selling real estate, those kinds of things.
Beautiful. I wrote it down. Thank you. That was accepted unsolicited.
Oh, thank you. If I had emojis, I would put them going up here too.
To reactions. You can turn your reactions.
There we go. That's so awesome. I love that one. Well, thank you so much for your time, Laura. I know you're super, super busy. I love following you. I love everything that you're doing. Hopefully we can stay in touch. And until the next time, thank you so much. Thank you for your service too, by the way. Even though you don't get paid like you should in the government, I do appreciate it. I pay my taxes, all of that fun stuff. And we have what we have because of people like you who give so much from your family, from your life to help us with that.
Thank you, Brett. I always turn that back around and say thank you for being an incredible American, because if there aren't Americans, then there is no one to serve. So
That's right. That's right. Let's find more of them. If we could all just be happy and jolly together and learn together, it's so great. And thank you again for sharing your experiences. The listeners out there, again, that's America's Favorite Doctor on Instagram. You got to follow. You got to check this stuff out. It's great. You can reach out to her. You can reach out to us too at info@physicianwealthsystems.com. You can shoot us an email if you'd like to be a guest. If you want to have any further questions for Laura, we've got a secret direct connect with her. Just reach out to us. And thank you so much for your time today and your attention. If you've got anything else to add, or if there's any more value we could bring to you, shoot us a comment. And you can find us on Instagram as well too. But until next time, thank you so much. Real Estate Mogul MD.